Welcome back to the Olive Grove podcast. Today we're taking a deep dive into Zechariah.
Zechariah.
Specifically chapter 2.
Yeah.
It's, a chapter full of vivid imagery and symbolism.
That's a symbolism.
Yeah, and we're here to kind of unpack it and see how it relates to us.
Absolutely. So Zechariah was a prophet who
Wow.
received these incredible visions from God.
Okay.
And chapter 2 centers around one particular vision
Okay.
about the future of Jerusalem.
The future of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that stood out to me was this image of a man with a measuring line.
Right.
So what is the significance of that?
Yeah. Well, in the Bible, a measuring line often symbolizes God's plan for something,
Okay.
whether it's expanding, restoring, or even judging. In this case, the angel is measuring Jerusalem not to determine its physical size,
Right.
but to assess its spiritual condition.
So like a spiritual checkup for the city.
Yeah.
It makes me think, what are the measuring tools we use in our own lives to assess our spiritual growth? Yeah. Are we, measuring our progress based on outward actions
Right.
or inward transformation?
It's a great question to consider as we go deeper into this chapter.
Right.
Now, the next part of the vision gets really intriguing.
Okay.
The angel reveals that Jerusalem will be so full of people and livestock
Wow.
that it won't even need walls.
A city without walls.
Mm.
That seems a bit counterintuitive, especially back then when walls were essential for protection.
Exactly. But think about the symbolism here.
Okay.
It suggests a time of overflowing abundance and peace,
Okay.
where physical barriers are no longer necessary.
Wow.
It's a beautiful picture of a city bursting with life, vitality, and security.
And it's fascinating to think that much of modern Jerusalem has actually expanded beyond the walls of the old city.
Absolutely.
So in a way, this prophecy has a real-world parallel today.
It does. It does.
But there's another layer of symbolism to consider.
Yes.
The city being filled with livestock
Yeah.
also points back to the practice of animal sacrifices, suggesting a time of restored worship and connection with God.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about physical expansion.
Right.
It's about spiritual revival as well.
Yes.
God's presence is at the heart of this vision.
Precisely. And speaking of God's presence, the next verse gives us this incredible image of God being a wall of fire,
Wow.
surrounding Jerusalem, providing protection and security.
Like a divine fortress.
Yeah,
That must have been such a comforting thought for the people at that time,
absolutely.
especially if they were feeling vulnerable or anxious about the future.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even when things feel chaotic or uncertain, God's protection surrounds those who trust in him.
Yeah. Where do you find that sense of safety and security in your own life?
Yeah.
What are the walls of fire that protect you in times of need?
Those are powerful questions to reflect on.
Now, along with this message of protection, there's also a call to return.
Yes.
God urges his people to flee the land of the north and come back to Jerusalem.
Yes, and this idea of exile can resonate with us on a personal level, too.
Okay.
Are there areas in your own life where you might feel exiled or separated from God?
Oh, interesting.
Perhaps it's a broken relationship, a harmful habit, or a negative mindset that's creating distance between you and him?
It's like God is saying, come back to me.
Yeah,
Come back to where you truly belong.
exactly.
Yeah.
And to emphasize how deeply he cares for his people,
Okay.
God uses a strikingly tender image.
Oh,
He refers to them as the apple of his eye,
wow.
signifying his intense love and unwavering devotion.
That image really struck me.
Yeah,
It's so intimate and personal.
it is.
It makes me think about how fiercely a parent would protect their child from harm.
Right.
It conveys that same level of care and concern that God has for each of us.
Absolutely. He defends those who are close to him.
Right?
You are cherished by God. Hold on to that thought as we continue to explore this chapter.
Now, this vision also hints at a future filled with joy and peace.
Yep.
Zechariah mentions a time when Yeshua, that is Jesus, will come to reign on earth for 1,000 years,
Right.
a period known as the millennium.
The millennia.
And this period is described as a time of unparalleled peace and joy.
Yes.
We see this reflected in the verse about the daughter of Zion singing and rejoicing.
Yes.
It's a glimpse into a future where God's presence will be fully realized on earth.
It's a beautiful picture of hope and restoration, isn't it?
Yeah. And speaking of hope,
Okay.
that brings us to another key point.
Yes.
The idea of salvation being available to all. The verse that speaks of many nations joining themselves to God clearly shows that God's love and grace extend to people of all backgrounds,
Yes.
both Jews and Gentiles.
Yes. This is a pivotal message, especially considering the historical context.
Right.
It foreshadows the inclusive nature of the Christian faith, where God's love transcends all boundaries.
It's a beautiful picture, yeah.
It is.
And this idea of God's love breaking down boundaries brings to mind a wonderful initiative that's close to our hearts here at the Olive Grove. The My Christian Space community and the incredible work being done by the Enduring Freedom Ministries.
My Christian Space is a vibrant online community where believers can connect, share their faith journeys, and encourage one another.
Right. And Enduring Freedom Ministries is dedicated to serving and empowering communities in need around the world.
That's great.
And right now they have a particularly special project underway.
Oh.
They're working to establish a food pantry in Jerusalem,
Oh, wow.
a city that holds such deep significance to our faith.
Yes.
As we've been discussing in our deep dives today,
Yes.
Jerusalem is the city where Jesus walked, taught, and ultimately gave his life for us.
That's right.
And it's a city that continues to face many challenges, including food insecurity, for a significant portion of its population.
Yes, very true.
That's where this food pantry comes in.
Right.
It's a tangible way to demonstrate God's love and compassion to those in need in a place that's so central to our faith.
Absolutely.
We know our listeners have generous hearts. And if you feel led to support this vital project,
Yeah.
we encourage you to visit our website to learn more and donate.
Yeah.
Your contribution, no matter the size, can make a real difference in the lives of people in Jerusalem.
That's right.
They're getting back to Zechariah chapter 2.
Yes, let's delve back into this powerful vision.
Zechariah emphasizes that Jerusalem is ultimately God's city, and any human plans for peace must acknowledge this fundamental truth.
It's a sobering reminder that our human efforts can only go so far.
Right.
We need to trust in God's ultimate plan and sovereignty.
And there's this beautiful concept of Jerusalem being made new,
Yeah.
suggesting a future transformation and restoration that goes beyond anything we can imagine.
Yes, it's a promise of hope and renewal, not just for Jerusalem, but for all of creation. It's a reminder that even amidst the complexities and challenges of our world, God is working to bring about his ultimate plan of redemption and restoration.
And finally, the chapter concludes with this beautiful call for silence before God, highlighting the importance of trusting in him and allowing him to work.
Absolutely.
It's like an invitation to let go of our anxieties and worries and find peace and security in his presence.
Yes. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the best thing we can do is simply be still and know that he is God.
Yeah.
He is in control, and we can find rest in his loving care. You know, it's interesting you mentioned finding peace in God's presence,
Okay.
because that ties in beautifully with what we see next in Zechariah's vision.
Oh, what's that?
Well, remember how we talked about God being a wall of fire around Jerusalem,
Right.
offering protection?
Yeah.
It goes even deeper than that.
Oh,
The chapter goes on to say that anyone who tries to harm Jerusalem
Right.
or God's people is essentially attacking God himself.
wow.
It's a powerful statement about God's commitment to protecting those who are his.
That's a strong image.
Yeah.
So it's not just about passive protection.
Right.
God is actively defending his people.
Exactly. The chapter uses this vivid phrase, the apple of my eye, to describe God's people.
Wow.
It shows just how precious and dear they are to him.
It reminds me of how a mother bear would fiercely protect her cubs.
Yeah,
There's that same intensity of love and protectiveness.
absolutely. And it's a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles.
Right.
God is fighting for us even when we can't see it.
That's a comforting thought, especially when we face challenges and setbacks.
Absolutely. Now, remember how we talked about the daughter of Zion singing and rejoicing?
Right.
This image is closely tied to the idea of God's protection and the future hope for Jerusalem.
Okay.
It points towards a time when God's reign will be fully established, a time of peace and joy.
Right. The millennial reign of Jesus that we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. And it's not just a time of celebration for a select few.
Right.
Remember that verse about many nations joining themselves to God?
Right.
It underscores the beautiful inclusiveness of God's plan. Salvation and this future hope are available to everyone regardless of their background.
It speaks to the boundless nature of God's love reaching out to all people. And it reminds me of something we talked about earlier, this idea of returning to God,
Yeah.
of finding our true belonging in him.
You're making a great connection there. It all ties together.
Yeah.
This call to return, this assurance of God's protection, and this promise of future hope and rejoicing, they all point us back to the heart of what Zechariah is conveying.
It's about drawing close to God and finding our security and joy in him.
Precisely. And that brings us to the concluding message of this chapter.
What's that?
It's a call for silence before God.
Okay.
The chapter ends with these words, Be silent, all humanity before Adonai, for he has been roused from his holy dwelling.
What a powerful statement. It almost feels like a hush falling over the scene. After all this talk of measuring lines, overflowing cities, and divine protection.
It's a stark contrast to the busyness and chaos of life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's an invitation to be still and recognize the awesome power and sovereignty of God.
And I think that's a message that resonates deeply in our modern world, where we're constantly bombarded with noise and distractions.
Absolutely. It's a call to quiet our minds, to step away from the clamor, and to simply be present with God.
It's in that stillness, that quiet surrender, that we can truly hear his voice and find peace.
And it's in that place of peace that we can truly grasp the depth of what Zechariah is revealing in this chapter.
Right.
God's unwavering love, his powerful protection, and his incredible plan for the future.
You know, it's amazing how much we can unpack from just one chapter of the Bible.
It really is.
Zechariah chapter 2 has really given us a lot to think about.
Yeah, it has. From the imagery of the measuring line and the city without walls, to the powerful declarations of God's protection and the promise of future joy, this chapter paints a vivid picture of God's heart for his people and his plans for the future.
And it's a reminder that even though these words were written centuries ago, they still speak to us today. They offer guidance, comfort, and hope for our lives right now.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to encourage you to go back and read Zechariah chapter 2 for yourself. Let the words sink in and allow God to speak to you personally through them.
Yeah, you might be surprised at what you discover.
Absolutely.
Each time you read Scripture, you can uncover new layers of meaning and find fresh insights that apply to your life in unique ways.
That's right.
And if you're looking for more enriching discussions like this, be sure to subscribe to the Olive Grove podcast on YouTube.
And visit the My Christian Space website for early access to podcast episodes and to learn more about the incredible work of Enduring Freedom Ministries, including their efforts to establish a food pantry in Jerusalem.
Yeah, we believe that understanding and applying God's Word can truly transform lives and communities.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Zechariah chapter 2. Until next time, may you find peace and strength in knowing that you are deeply loved and cherished by God.
That's right.